Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. So today we're going to be exploring something pretty interesting. It's called the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood. Now, before you start picturing guys running around in togas or, hidden temples in the middle of the ocean, we should clarify this isn't some historical group we're talking about. This is a modern spiritual organization. And to help us kind of unpack some of their ideas, we're going to be looking at a recent Q&A with their grandmaster, a guy by the name of WaXhira.
It's really interesting how they use that name Atlantean, not necessarily to suggest a direct link to the lost city of Atlantis or anything like that, but more as a symbol for a particular kind of spiritual philosophy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not so much about like a specific lineage,
Yeah.
but more about tapping into a certain mindset or a
Mhm.
way of thinking.
Right, exactly. And one of the things that really struck me in this Q&A was their emphasis on seeking rather than believing.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. What exactly do they mean by seeking versus believing?
Well, Waxira talks about how believing can sometimes lead to stagnation, where you're just accepting a set of ideas without really questioning them or exploring them for yourself. It can become a kind of spiritual groupthink,
Hmm.
where everyone's just following the same path without venturing off on their own.
So it sounds like seeking, on the other hand, is more about forging your own path, asking questions, challenging assumptions, and maybe even going against the grain a little bit to find your own truth.
Exactly. And, I think most of us can relate to that on some level. We've all had times in our lives where we've had to break free from certain beliefs that we were raised with or expectations of society to really discover what resonates with us personally.
It makes me think of that analogy that Waxhira uses about, you know, believers walking in groups and seekers venturing out alone. It can be scary to kind of go against the grain like that, but there's also a real sense of freedom and discovery in that solo journey.
Absolutely. There's a certain courage that comes with stepping outside of your comfort zone and exploring uncharted territory. And it's often in those moments of exploration that we experience the most profound growth and understanding.
This is already making me rethink my approach to everything. It's like we're constantly bombarded with information and beliefs, and how often do we actually stop to question those things and seek out our own answers?
Yeah, it's so easy to just get caught up in the whirlwind of daily life and just go along with what we're told. But the Brotherhood really challenges us to dig a little deeper, to be more active participants in our own spiritual evolution.
And one of the things that Wax here emphasizes is that true happiness and joy, these aren't things that we find externally. They're qualities that already reside within us. He even quotes that famous line from Scripture, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you."
Yeah.
But he gives it a unique twist, doesn't he?
He does. He explains that this kingdom that's being referred to isn't some far off place, but rather it's our own inner essence, our natural state of being. So it's the idea that when we align with our true nature, happiness and joy naturally arise.
So it's not about chasing after external things to try to make us happy, but more about cultivating the conditions within ourselves to allow that happiness to blossom.
Exactly. It's a pretty profound shift in perspective. I mean, think about how much of our energy we spend pursuing things that we think will bring us happiness. What if instead we focused on uncovering that wellspring of joy that already exists within us?
Yeah, it's like we've been looking for something in all the wrong places. I mean, we've all
Right.
had those moments where we achieve a goal or we acquire something that we thought would make us happy. And then the feeling is so fleeting and it's like, okay, now what?
Right. You're trying to fill a void with something that can never truly satisfy it. But the Brotherhood suggests that the real key to lasting fulfillment lies in connecting with our true selves.
It really makes you question your own definition of happiness. What about you? Has this sparked any new insights for you?
Oh, definitely. I've been thinking a lot about how much of my own happiness is tied to, external achievements or validation from others. And it makes me wonder, what would it look like to cultivate that sense of joy from within, regardless of what's happening around me?
Okay, now I got to ask about something that really caught my attention. Waxhira talks about the importance of avoiding quick conclusions and maintaining a sense of childlike wonder, which sounds beautiful in theory. But how do we actually apply that in a world that's constantly demanding answers and solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking we have it all figured out. We categorize things, we label them, we make assumptions based on limited information.
We want to put everything in a neat little box so we can move on to the next thing. But I think that what Waxhira is challenging us to do is to resist that urge, to stay open to new possibilities,
Yeah.
and allow ourselves to be surprised by what we discover.
Exactly. He uses the example of a child who's encountering something new for the first time. They don't have any preconceived notions or judgments. They're just observant with a sense of wonder and curiosity.
And I think that's what he's encouraging us to reclaim, that sense of awe and wonder, that ability to approach life with fresh eyes, even if we think we've seen it all before.
Think about it. When was the last time you really looked at something with a sense of wonder? Not just passively seeing it, but really observing it, noticing the details, the nuances, the things you might have missed before.
Wow, that's a good question. And, I think that sense of wonder is what fuels our curiosity, keeps us learning and growing. It's the antidote to becoming jaded and complacent.
Absolutely. And it's that openness, that willingness to embrace the unknown, that allows us to truly connect with the magic and mystery of life.
And speaking of magic and mystery, I have to ask about this idea of love as the highest intelligence. It's something that WaXhira talks about quite a bit, and it really intrigued me. But we're not talking about romantic love here, right?
No, it's a much broader concept than that. He describes love as this force that enhances our perception, allowing us to see beyond our own biases and connect with the inherent goodness in others.
So it's almost like love acts as a lens that clarifies our vision, helping us to see the world more clearly.
That's a great way to put it. He suggests that love strips away those layers of judgment and prejudice and fear that often cloud our perception. It allows us to see things as they truly are, not as we want them to be, or fear they might be.
And it's not just about seeing things more clearly, it's also about acting with compassion and understanding right. Because when we see the inherent goodness in others, it naturally inspires us to treat them with kindness and respect.
Exactly. WaXhira talks about how love has a ripple effect. It starts with that internal shift in perception, and then it radiates outward, influencing our interactions and creating a more positive and harmonious world.
Okay, so we're talking about love as this profound force for good. But here's a question we often hear about love being blind, about people making bad decisions because they're in love. Doesn't that kind of contradict this idea of love as clarity?
That's a great point, and it brings up an important distinction. We have to be careful not to confuse genuine love with things like infatuation or attachment, which definitely can cloud our judgment and lead us down the wrong path.
So maybe it's about discerning the difference between love that is rooted in ego and love that is rooted in something deeper, something more expansive.
Exactly. Genuine love, the kind that WaXhira is talking about. It isn't possessive or conditional. It's a state of being, a way of relating to the world that is based on compassion and understanding, and a deep recognition of our interconnectedness.
So it's not about clinging to people or things, but about recognizing the inherent value and beauty in all beings, even those who are different from us.
Precisely. And it's that recognition, that understanding of our shared humanity, that can truly transform our relationships and create a more compassionate and just world.
This is blowing my mind. It's one thing to talk about love as this feel-good emotion, but this is like a whole other level. It's about love as a driving force for positive change, a catalyst for personal and societal transformation.
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? And it really challenges us to reevaluate our own capacity for love, not just in our personal relationships, but in the way we interact with the world around us.
This whole conversation is about seeking versus believing and cultivating happiness from within and embracing love as the highest intelligence. It's really got me thinking. It's like we've been given a whole new set of lenses to view the world through.
I agree. It's a fresh perspective that challenges us to question our assumptions and explore new possibilities.
Well, on that note, let's shift gears a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about another concept that WaXhira brings up, which is the potential downsides of routine. I'll admit, I'm a creature of habit, so this one kind of hit home for me.
Yeah, routine can be a double-edged sword, can it? On the one hand, it provides structure and stability, a sense of familiarity. It can make our lives feel more manageable, more efficient.
But on the other hand, it's easy to get stuck in those ruts. You become so reliant on routine that you lose your spontaneity, your ability to adapt to change. It's almost like you become a robot going through the motions without really being present in the moment.
That's exactly the point that WaXhira is making. He talks about how consciousness is what distinguishes humans from robots.
Yeah.
It's our ability to be aware, to choose our actions, and respond to the ever-changing circumstances of life.
So it's not about abandoning routine altogether, but about infusing it with consciousness.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between structure and spontaneity, between the comfort of the familiar and the excitement of the unknown. It's about bringing awareness to our actions, even the most mundane ones, and choosing how we want to show up in each moment.
It reminds me of a time when I was so caught up in my daily routine that I felt like I was just going through the motions. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. It was like this hamster wheel. And I felt completely disconnected from myself and the world around me.
Oh, I think we can all relate to that. We've all been there at some point. But what did you do to break out of that rut?
Well, it took a while, but I started making small changes.
Yeah.
I started incorporating some mindfulness practices into my day, like taking a few minutes each morning to meditate, to really connect with my breath. And I started looking for opportunities to break out of my routine, even in small ways,
Like what?
like taking a different route to work, trying a new restaurant, or even just spending some time in nature. It sounds simple, but it made a huge difference. I started feeling more alive, more present, more connected to the world around me.
That's a great example of how we can consciously choose to break free from those patterns that are no longer serving us. It's not always easy, but it's so worth it.
And I think it ties back to what we were talking about earlier with seeking. It's about being willing to step outside of our comfort zones and explore new territory, even in our daily lives.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating that mindset of curiosity and openness and being willing to challenge the status quo, even the status quo of our own routines.
Okay, so we've talked about seeking versus believing, the importance of cultivating happiness from within, the transformative power of love, and the potential pitfalls of routine. What else struck you as particularly interesting in this Q&A?
One thing that really stood out to me was the Brotherhood's perspective on sin. It's very different from the traditional view. They don't see sin as this moral failing or a transgression against some divine law.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do they define sin?
They see it as an error, a mistake stemming from ignorance.
So it's not about being bad or evil, but about making choices that are out of alignment with our true nature, because we lack understanding.
Exactly. And I think that's a much more compassionate and empowering way to look at it. It shifts the focus from judgment and condemnation to understanding and growth.
It definitely takes the sting out of the word sin, doesn't it? Instead of feeling shame or guilt. We can view these experiences as opportunities to learn and evolve.
Precisely. And WaXhira emphasizes that when we make these errors, we are the ones who suffer most. It's not about some external punishment, but rather the natural consequences of our actions.
So it's like when we make a mistake, we're not being punished by some higher power, but we're experiencing the natural outcomes of our choices.
Right. And by recognizing those errors, we can start to address the root cause, which is often ignorance or a lack of self-awareness.
That's a huge shift in thinking. Instead of focusing on punishing people for their sins, we can focus on helping them understand those errors and learn from them.
Exactly. It's about offering guidance and support rather than judgment and condemnation.
It's funny because WaXhira even points out that the word sin actually translates to missing the mark.
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense. It's not about being inherently bad, but about straying from our true path.
And we all stray from time to time. The important thing is to recognize those missteps and course correct.
This is such a profound perspective. And I think it has the potential to revolutionize the way we approach accountability and forgiveness. Instead of punishing people for their mistakes, we can help them learn and grow from them.
It's a powerful idea. And it really aligns with the Brotherhood's emphasis on compassion and understanding.
Okay, this deep dive is already blowing my mind. We've covered so much ground, but there's still so much to explore.
I know, it's incredible how many thought-provoking ideas WaXhira packs into this Q&A.
All right, let's take a moment to catch our breath and digest all this amazing information. And when we come back, we'll delve deeper into the Brotherhood's perspective on leadership, external validation, and the true nature of intelligence. Stay tuned.
So, as we were talking about sin as error in the last segment, it really got me thinking about the Brotherhood's views on leadership and how they seem to be really interconnected.
Oh yeah, now that you mention it, I see the connection too. If sin stems from ignorance, then effective leadership must involve guiding people towards greater understanding, right?
Exactly. WaXhira talks about how true leadership isn't about wielding power or controlling others, but about inspiring and empowering them to realize their full potential. And he emphasizes that genuine leadership requires this deep connection to what he calls divine intelligence, which is a kind of wisdom that goes beyond just the intellect. It encompasses compassion, intuition, and a deep understanding of interconnectedness.
That reminds me of what we were discussing earlier about love as the highest intelligence. Maybe a true leader needs to embody that kind of love to really effectively guide and inspire others.
That's a really interesting insight. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but it makes perfect sense. And WaXhira actually draws a distinction between leadership and management, suggesting that while management focuses on tasks and logistics, leadership is about vision, purpose, and connecting people to something greater than themselves.
So a great manager isn't necessarily a great leader. There are different skills and qualities at play.
Precisely. You could be a brilliant strategist, a great organizer. But if you lack that ability to inspire and connect with people on a deeper level, you're not likely to be an effective leader in the Brotherhood's view.
This is really making me rethink my whole definition of leadership. It's not just about giving orders and getting things done, but about empowering others to grow and evolve.
And it's about creating a shared vision that resonates with people's hearts and minds, something that inspires them to contribute their unique talents and perspectives.
That raises an interesting question for me. How does one cultivate those leadership qualities, especially that connection to divine intelligence that WaXhira talks about? Is it something you're born with, or is it something that can be developed?
That's a great question, and I don't think there's a simple answer. WaXhira doesn't give us a step-by-step guide or anything, but he does emphasize the importance of self-awareness, inner work, and a commitment to spiritual growth. He suggests that as we deepen our understanding of ourselves and our connection to the divine, our leadership qualities will naturally emerge.
So it's an ongoing process of self-discovery and transformation.
Exactly. It's not about achieving some fixed state of enlightenment, but rather about continuously striving to align with our highest potential. And that journey of self-discovery often involves confronting our shadows, those aspects of ourselves that we tend to hide or deny.
And speaking of shadows, WaXhira also talks about the dangers of seeking external validation. He sees things like fame, wealth, and social status as mere shadows of our true essence.
Yeah, he suggests that when we chase after those external markers of success, we're essentially seeking validation in all the wrong places. We're looking outside of ourselves for something that can only be found within.
It's like we're trying to fill an inner void with external things.
Hmm.
But it never quite works, does it?
It's a temporary fix at best. I mean, those external validations might give you a fleeting sense of satisfaction, but they don't address the underlying need for self-love and acceptance.
So what's the alternative? How do we break free from that cycle of seeking external validation?
Well, WaXhira emphasizes the importance of cultivating inner fulfillment. He suggests that when we connect with our true nature, with the qualities that already reside within us, we no longer feel the need to seek validation from others.
So it's about recognizing our inherent worth and value, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from external achievements to inner growth and transformation. It's about cultivating a sense of self-love that is unconditional and unwavering.
It reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with happiness. True happiness comes from within, not from external things. And maybe it's the same with validation.
Yeah, that's a great connection. And it's something that I think a lot of us struggle with in our modern world. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that we need to be more, do more, achieve more. It's easy to get caught up in that game and lose sight of our true worth.
So how do we resist those messages and cultivate that sense of inner fulfillment?
Well, WaXhira doesn't offer any kind of quick fix, but he does emphasize the importance of self-reflection, mindfulness, and connecting to something greater than ourselves. He suggests that as we turn inward and connect with our spiritual core, we start to tap into this wellspring of love and wisdom that's always available to us.
It's about remembering who we truly are, beneath all the layers of conditioning and external expectations. And maybe it's through that process of self-discovery that we actually find the validation that we've been seeking all along.
That's beautifully put. And I think that sense of inner validation is what ultimately allows us to show up in the world with authenticity and confidence. We no longer feel the need to prove ourselves to others because we know our own worth.
This is so inspiring. It's like a whole new paradigm for living. Okay, so now I have to ask about something that really intrigued me. WaXhira talks about this link between intelligence and interconnectedness. But he's not just talking about like IQ or book smarts, right?
Right, he's talking about a much deeper understanding of how everything is connected. He suggests that true intelligence involves recognizing the intricate web of relationships that exists between all things and acting in a way that is harmonious with that web.
So it's not just about being smart in the traditional sense,
Yeah.
but about understanding our place in the grand scheme of things
Yeah,
and acting with wisdom and compassion.
exactly. It's about seeing the interconnectedness of all life and recognizing that our actions have ripple effects, impacting not just ourselves, but the whole web of existence.
Even using that really powerful quote, what you do to your brother, you do to yourself. It highlights the idea that we're all in this together
Eh.
and that our actions have consequences that extend far beyond our immediate circle.
And I think this perspective really challenges that individualistic mindset that's so prevalent in our culture. We're often taught to prioritize our own needs and desires above all else. But the Brotherhood suggests that true fulfillment comes from recognizing our interconnectedness and acting in a way that benefits the whole.
So it's about shifting from a me mentality to a we mentality and recognizing that our well-being is ultimately tied to the well-being of others and the planet as a whole.
Exactly. It's a more holistic and compassionate way of living.
And it requires a different kind of intelligence, one that goes beyond just the intellect.
Yeah.
It encompasses empathy, intuition, and a deep understanding of systems and relationships.
It's an intelligence that is rooted in love and wisdom, and it's something that we can all cultivate.
This is really making me rethink my whole definition of intelligence. It's not just about how much information we can accumulate or how quickly we can solve problems, but about how well we understand and navigate the complexities of life.
And how skillfully we weave ourselves into that tapestry of existence.
Now, on that note, I'm curious to hear the Brotherhood's perspective on human nature. Do they believe that humans are inherently good or bad? Because that seems to be a pretty fundamental question in a lot of spiritual traditions.
It is a fundamental question, and the Brotherhood stance is actually quite interesting. They believe that humans are inherently good, but often ignorant of their true nature.
So it's not that we're born bad or sinful, but that we've somehow forgotten our true essence, our inherent goodness.
Exactly. And WaXhira suggests that this forgetting is a natural part of the human experience. As we incarnate into this physical world, we become conditioned by our environment, our culture, our experiences. We develop beliefs and patterns that obscure our true nature.
So it's like we're wearing a mask that's hiding our true selves. And the goal is to remove that mask and rediscover who we really are.
That's a great analogy. And WaXhira emphasizes that knowledge and self-awareness are the keys to this process of unveiling. He suggests that as we become more aware of our thoughts, our beliefs, our motivations, we start to see through the illusions that keep us from recognizing our inherent goodness.
So it's about shining a light on those shadows that we were talking about earlier, the parts of ourselves that we tend to hide or deny.
Precisely. It's about bringing those shadows into the light of awareness and integrating them into our whole being. And, I think this process of self-discovery can be quite challenging at times. It requires a willingness to face our fears, our insecurities, our limiting beliefs.
But it's also incredibly liberating, isn't it? To finally shed those layers of conditioning and embrace who we truly are.
Oh, it's incredibly liberating. And it's through that process of self-acceptance that we start to experience true joy and fulfillment.
So we're talking about knowledge and self-awareness as the paths to rediscovering our inherent goodness. But what role do things like faith, prayer, and compassion play in this journey? Because WaXhira mentions those qualities quite a bit in the Q&A.
That's a great question. And it leads us into another really fascinating aspect of the Brotherhood's teachings. WaXhira suggests that even if we don't fully understand the mechanics of faith, prayer, love, and compassion, we can still experience their transformative effects.
So it's about embracing those practices, even if we don't have all the answers.
Exactly. He uses the analogy of technology. We use smartphones and computers and all sorts of complex devices without necessarily understanding how they work on a technical level.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, I have no idea how my phone actually works, but I still benefit from its capabilities.
Exactly. And WaXhira suggests that it's the same with faith, prayer, love, and compassion. We don't need to fully comprehend them intellectually to experience their positive influence in our lives.
So it's about trusting the process, even if we don't fully understand it, and allowing ourselves to be transformed by those qualities, even if we can't explain how it works.
Precisely. It's about embracing the mystery and allowing those forces to work their magic in our lives.
And I think that openness to mystery is so essential for spiritual growth. If we cling to our limited understanding, we close ourselves off to new possibilities and experiences.
Absolutely. It's that willingness to surrender to the unknown. That allows us to truly expand our consciousness and connect with something greater than ourselves.
This is all so mind-blowing. It's like we're being given a whole new framework for understanding ourselves and the world around us.
It's a paradigm shift for sure. And one of the things that WaXhira emphasizes is that this journey of spiritual awakening isn't a solo endeavor. While each of us has our own unique path to walk, we're not meant to do it alone.
So community is important in this process.
Absolutely. He talks about the importance of finding genuine spiritual teachers and mentors. who can guide and support us along the way. And he also emphasizes the power of Sangha, or spiritual community, where we can connect with like-minded individuals who are also on a path of growth and transformation.
But he also cautions against associating with what he calls false spiritual schools. What does he mean by that?
I think he's referring to groups or teachings that might seem spiritual on the surface, but ultimately lead people astray. They might promote dogma, or encourage dependency, or even exploit people for their own gain.
So it's about being discerning, choosing paths and teachers that align with our values and support our growth.
Exactly. WaXhira suggests that true spiritual teaching should uplift and empower us. They should inspire us to live more authentically, more compassionately, more joyfully. If a teaching leaves you feeling depleted or confused or disempowered, it's probably not the right path for you.
It's about finding what resonates with our hearts and souls and trusting our inner guidance to lead us in the right direction.
Exactly. And I think that discernment is an ongoing process. We're constantly learning and evolving, so it's important to stay open to new perspectives while also holding on to our core values.
This is such a valuable reminder. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new ideas and teachings, but it's so important to check in with ourselves and make sure those teachings are truly serving us.
And if they're not, we have the power to choose a different path.
Okay, so I have to ask about one more thing that really stood out to me in this Q&A. WaXhira talks about the potential distractions of material pursuits. And I'm curious to hear more about the Brotherhood's perspective on this. Do they advocate for a life of poverty and renunciation? Or is there a middle ground?
That's a great question, and I think it's something that a lot of people wonder about when it comes to spirituality. WaXhira doesn't advocate for a life of poverty or deprivation, but he does emphasize the importance of prioritizing spiritual growth and understanding.
So it's not about rejecting the material world altogether, but about finding a healthy balance.
Exactly. He suggests that when we align with our spiritual nature, material well-being tends to follow naturally as a byproduct. It's not the primary focus, but rather a natural consequence of living in alignment with our true selves.
So it's not about choosing one over the other, but recognizing that true abundance encompasses both the material and the spiritual.
Precisely. It's a holistic view that integrates both aspects of our being.
This is such a refreshing perspective. It's not about denying ourselves material comforts, but about recognizing that true fulfillment comes from a deeper source.
And it's about understanding that material possessions can be tools for growth and service, but they should never become our primary focus.
This deep dive has been incredibly illuminating. I feel like I've gained so much insight into the Brotherhood's teachings and how they can be applied in our own lives.
I agree. It's been a fascinating exploration of these really profound concepts that have the potential to transform the way we live and interact with the world.
All right, let's take a moment to pause here. And when we come back, we'll reflect on some of the key takeaways from this deep dive and leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder. Stay with us. Man, oh man, what a deep dive this has been. So many fascinating ideas from this Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood. I don't know about you, but I feel like my brain is doing backflips right now.
Yeah, tell me about it. I mean, it's incredible just how much WaXhira manages to pack into this one Q&A. It really is kind of like a roadmap for spiritual growth and self-discovery.
I keep thinking back to that idea of seeking versus believing. It's like a challenge to take ownership of our own spiritual journeys, to not just accept what we're told, but to actually go out and find our own answers.
Yeah, to be active participants,
Yeah.
to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep forging our own paths to understanding.
Exactly, and I think that's what keeps things interesting, right? It's what keeps us curious and engaged and open to new possibilities, like the opposite of being complacent or, just stuck in a rut.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about spiritual truth. It's like that same spirit of inquiry can apply to all areas of our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether you're exploring a new hobby or tackling a challenge at work, or even just trying to understand a different point of view, that willingness to seek just opens up so many possibilities.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of opening up possibilities, I have to say their perspective on love really kind of shifted something for me. This idea of love as like the highest form of intelligence, this force that enhances our perception and allows us to connect with the good in others.
Yeah.
It's profound.
Really challenges you to think about love not just as an emotion, but as like a way of being in the world, a way of seeing, thinking, acting. That can transform not only our own lives, but, the world around us.
And it's not always easy though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about how love can sometimes be confused with, infatuation or attachment. which can cloud our judgment,
Right.
can actually lead us down the wrong path.
Yeah, for sure. I think the key there, as with so many things on this journey, is discernment. Cultivating a love that's grounded in wisdom, compassion, a deep understanding of that interconnectedness we were talking about.
A love that's more expansive and inclusive
Yeah.
rather than, possessive or conditional.
Exactly. And that kind of love, I think, really does have the power to heal those divisions, to bridge those differences, to create a more harmonious and just world.
And one of the things I appreciate about the Atlantean Brotherhood teachings is they don't just present these big ideas. They also give us some really practical guidance on how to actually, integrate them into our lives.
Yeah.
Like that reminder about the pitfalls of routine.
Right? It's so easy to just kind of zone out, get stuck on autopilot in our daily lives, and lose that sense of presence and conscious choice.
Guilty as charged. But this conversation has inspired me to be a little more mindful of my routines, to look for those opportunities to shake things up, even if it's just in small ways.
Doesn't have to be anything drastic. Even
Yeah.
small changes can make a big difference. Like taking a different route to work or, trying a new recipe for dinner. Or even just pausing for a moment to appreciate the beauty around you.
It's about bringing that awareness to those everyday moments, right?
Yeah.
Choosing how we want to experience them.
Yeah, exactly. Infusing our routines with consciousness and intention.
And speaking of intention, I thought their perspective on sin as error was pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes away some of that shame and guilt around making mistakes, and instead sees them as opportunities for growth.
Yeah, such a more compassionate approach. It's like instead of judging ourselves or others for our missteps, we can look at them as valuable feedback that helps us to course correct and move closer to our true path.
And I love how WaXhira even points out that, the original meaning of the word sin
Well,
is literally missing the mark. It's not about being a bad person. It's just about, straying from your intended target.
right, and we all do that from time to time. The important thing is to recognize those errors and learn from them and keep moving forward.
And to be kind to ourselves in the process, right?
Absolutely. We're all on this journey together, and we all make mistakes.
Okay, so one last thing I want to touch on before we wrap up. It's something that really resonated with me, and that's WaXhira's definition of true intelligence as that understanding of interconnectedness.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it? To recognize that we're all part of this intricate web of life, that our actions have these ripple effects far beyond just ourselves.
It makes me think of that quote, what you do to your brother, you do to yourself.
Yeah.
It really highlights how important it is to act with wisdom and compassion, not just for our own benefit, but for the well-being of the whole. And it really challenges us to expand our definition of intelligence beyond just, our intellectual capacity.
Right.
Like true intelligence, in their view. It includes empathy and intuition and understanding how systems and relationships work.
Yeah, it's about seeing the bigger picture, understanding how everything fits together.
Exactly.
And recognizing that our well-being is ultimately tied to the well-being of others and the planet as a whole.
This whole deep dive has been like a masterclass in conscious living. It's given us so much to think about and so much to apply in our own lives.
I agree. It's been a really enriching exploration.
And I have a feeling these insights will continue to unfold in new and maybe unexpected ways as we go forward.
Oh, for sure. The seeds of wisdom have been planted. Now it's up to us to nurture them.
Love it. And to kind of keep you pondering these ideas, I want to leave you with a final question. If sin is truly an error of ignorance, how do we actively seek out the knowledge to help us avoid those errors? Something to think about as you continue to explore your own spiritual path.
That's a great question. Keep seeking, keep questioning, keep expanding your understanding.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Sacred Atlantean Brotherhood. Hope you found it enlightening as I did. And until next time, keep seeking, keep loving, and keep shining your light.